You're not even going to pretend to care it's our anniversary tomorrow? Miranda leaned against the doorframe, her suitcase upright by her side like a silent witness. Her lips curled into a half-smirk, the kind that made my stomach turn more than a full-blown fight ever could. "Oh, please," she said, rolling her eyes. "You'll survive one weekend without me. It's a girl's trip, Liam, not a war deployment." I laughed, but it was hollow. "Funny. From where I'm standing, it kind of feels like you're deserting the front lines." She exhaled dramatically, like she was exhausted by the mere effort of being married to me. "I told you last week. I'm going to Vermont with Lacey and Tasha. Don't act blindsided." "You told me, yeah?" "Not asked. Not invited. Not even a what do you think." I took a step closer. "You said it like you were reading off a grocery list." Her nails tapped rhythmically on the handle of her luggage. "That's because I knew you'd turn it into this." "This?" My voice cracked slightly, the anger coiling under my ribs. "You mean me caring? You mean me assuming anniversaries still meant something to you?" She rolled her shoulders like she was brushing off dust. "It's just a date, Liam. Stop acting like I slapped your mother." That one landed. I flinched. Then, before I could respond, she turned away, heels clicking down the narrow hallway of our apartment, each step echoing like a gavel banging out the verdict. I didn't follow. I didn't call after her. I just stood there, heart pounding, watching her silhouette vanish behind the elevator doors. And when they finally closed, sealing her smug exit, it felt like the walls around me exhaled, and not in relief. More like mourning. The hallway light flickered above me, casting sharp, shifting shadows across the floor. I stared down at the pattern for a long moment, until my breath evened out and the fury in my chest settled into something colder. Denser. Disbelief? No. Recognition. This wasn't some one-off act of selfishness. This was Miranda drawing a line, and me finally seeing it. Back inside, our apartment looked the same, but it didn't feel it. The throw blanket still draped over the couch's armrest. The kitchen smelled faintly of garlic from last night's takeout. The photo of us at Cannon Beach smiled at me from the wall, frozen in a lie. I moved on autopilot, closed the door, locked it, turned off the hallway light. In the kitchen, I rinsed out my coffee mug from earlier, even though I hadn't taken more than 2 sips. That was my life, really. Predictable. Routine. I taught 8th grade history in a public school that hadn't changed its hallway paint since the Reagan administration. My sneakers had permanent dust from pacing between desks. I had lesson plans color-coded by unit. Kids liked me. Parents tolerated me. And I was good at it, boring as that sounds. I wasn't flashy. I wasn't reckless. But I was reliable. Solid. And somewhere along the line, Miranda stopped seeing value in that. I leaned against the counter, arms crossed, eyes locked on the door she'd just left through. I wasn't crying. Not even close. But my hands were shaking slightly. Because somewhere deep down, I knew tonight was different. This wasn't her blowing off steam or needing space. This was her slipping into a world where I no longer existed. A place I wasn't invited to, not even as a memory. And maybe, just maybe, she thought I'd wait here, sit quietly in my corner while she painted over us. But she'd misjudged something. I don't sit still in the fire. I learned to walk through it. And if you think this was the end of the story, you don't know me yet. The next night, I found myself at Mercer's, a lakeside bar tucked between a marina and a bait shop. The kind of place where beer came in glass bottles and nobody ever asked for the Wi-Fi password. I sat between my oldest friend, Jonah, and his younger brother, Tyler, both of whom had known me since high school. They talked about the Yankees' pitching rotation like it was a sacred text. Tyler argued that Schmidt didn't have the stamina for the late innings. Jonah countered with stats from last year's postseason. They were animated, throwing back laughter and nachos with the ease of men who didn't have anything pressing weighing down their chests. I forced a laugh here and there, nodded at the right moments. I even raised my bottle when they toasted to surviving another week in the American dream. But my heart wasn't in it. Not fully. I kept watching the lake outside the window. Dark, still, endless. The moon left a silver scratch across the surface, like a scar that never healed. "You good, man?" Jonah asked, leaning in as Tyler disappeared to hit the restroom. I turned, blinking out of my trance. "Yeah, just tired. Long week." He didn't press. That's what I liked about Jonah. He never forced the conversation. He just let it hang in the air, and if I wanted to speak, he'd be there. And if I didn't, he'd still be there. Miranda hadn't texted. Not a word since last night. No check-in. No, we landed. No photo dump of their resort room, or some ridiculous group shot with drinks held high. Just silence. And here's the thing. I should have been furious. Maybe even relieved. But what I felt was something harder to define. Like the silence wasn't absence, but strategy. She wanted me to wonder, to stew in it, to twist myself into knots imagining what kind of bikinis Tasha packed or which strangers Miranda might accidentally meet at the hotel bar. It was classic Miranda. Remove herself, create a vacuum, and wait for me to fill it with guilt. But something about tonight felt different. I sipped my beer slowly, watching the condensation bead and rolled down the glass like time itself didn't want to stick around. My mind wandered, uninvited, to the little things. The way Miranda used to hum when she brushed her teeth, the smell of her perfume on our pillowcases, how she always used a ridiculous amount of lemon in her tea. I should have missed her, but I didn't. Not really. What I missed was the version of her I used to believe in. That quiet realization settled over me like a warm jacket on a cold bench. I wasn't mourning her absence. I was discovering who I was without her. And it didn't feel empty. Not entirely. Later that night, I stood outside the bar, letting the cool lake breeze wash over my face. The laughter from inside faded behind me. I could hear the water lapping against the dock, slow and rhythmic. Jonah had offered me a ride, but I waved him off. I needed the walk. The sky above Mercer Bay was wide and clean, the stars sharp and unapologetic. I shoved my hands in my pockets and stared up at them, unsure why they felt more honest than anything I'd heard from Miranda in months. Maybe because they didn't try to be anything else. Maybe because they just were. My phone buzzed once in my pocket. Reflexively, I reached for it, already bracing for Miranda's name. But it wasn't her. Just a spam text. Some discount on contact lenses I never ordered. I didn't know whether to laugh or feel insulted. Still, I couldn't help glancing at her message thread. Still blank. No new texts. No check-ins. Just our last conversation from 2 days ago. A reminder about picking up almond milk. The absurdity of that being our final exchange stung more than I'd admit. I slipped the phone back into my coat and kept walking, each step pulling me deeper into the thought I hadn't dared to voice yet. What if this wasn't a pause? What if this was a beginning? I should have gone straight to bed when I got home. Instead, I wandered through the apartment like a stranger, noticing details I usually ignored. The wine glass on the sink that she hadn't rinsed, her sandals still kicked off by the door, the faint trace of her floral shampoo lingering in the bathroom like she hadn't left at all. It was eerie how present she still felt in the space, even though she was states away. Her absence wasn't quiet, it was screaming. I sat on the edge of our bed, phone in hand, thumb hovering over her name. The last call we'd had was 3 days ago. The last real conversation? Maybe longer. I told myself I just wanted to check in. Not because I missed her. Not because I was worried. Just because. I tapped call. The first ring sounded normal. The second made my stomach tighten. By the fourth, I already knew it was going to voicemail. Hey, it's Miranda. You know what to do. Beep. I didn't leave a message. I hung up. 30 minutes later, I called again. Same result. And again. And again. Nothing. I wasn't panicked. Not exactly. But that space between concern and anger is thin, razor thin, and I was walking it barefoot. I texted her, just checking in. Let me know you're okay. The message sat there, unread. No delivered. No reply. I stared at the blinking cursor, then shut the screen off and tossed the phone onto her pillow. That was the part that got me, I think. The silence. The refusal to even pretend she cared how this would land. Miranda could be cruel with timing. That wasn't new, but this felt different. Calculated. It was like she knew exactly when I'd crack, and was timing it down to the second. I lay back against the bed, staring at the ceiling fan spinning slowly above me. The soft hum filled the room, but it didn't soothe anything. Instead, it felt like a clock counting down to something I hadn't agreed to yet. My mind wouldn't shut up. It kept circling the same questions. Who was she with? Why wouldn't she answer? Was this the plan all along? The ceiling, for all its stillness, felt alive, like it had stories to tell if I listened long enough. Shadows shifted across the paint, mimicking shapes that didn't exist. One looked like her silhouette standing by the door. Another, her outline curled up on the couch, arms folded, face unreadable. I turned onto my side, hoping sleep would drag me down. It didn't. Every creak of the walls felt louder. Every distant car horn sounded like a call I'd missed. And the sheets, normally cool and familiar, felt foreign. Hostile even. I rolled to her side of the bed, buried my face in her pillow. It smelled like her. That sweet amber scent she always said was light enough to be interesting. She had a way of making everything about her sound like a poem, even perfume. But lying there, surrounded by that softness, it didn't comfort me. It burned. Because for all the years I'd been good, dependable, kind, present, this was what I got. A voicemail greeting. A blank screen. A pillow that smelled like someone who couldn't be bothered to say goodnight. Around 3:14 a.m., I sat up suddenly, pulled the blankets off, and paced to the kitchen. Poured a glass of water. Stared at nothing. Then back to bed, staring at the ceiling again. And somewhere between the fifth and sixth time I tried not to cry, I felt it. That shift. Not a scream. Not a crack. Just a quiet recalibration. Like my soul moved an inch closer to something it had been ignoring. Like I'd finally accepted something I didn't want to admit. She wasn't lost. She was leaving. And I needed to stop chasing footsteps that had already disappeared down the hall. Our anniversary fell on a Saturday that year. The kind of July evening where the sun didn't dip until after 8, and the sky turned soft like the inside of a peach. I wasn't planning to go anywhere. But Jonah texted around 5, said some friends were grilling over at his place by the lake, and I figured, why not? Better that than sitting alone in a dim apartment, waiting for a message that wasn't coming. The backyard buzzed with soft music, laughter, paper plates bending under the weight of burgers. The smell of grilled corn drifted through the air. I tried to let it all in, tried to feel present, grateful even, but it was like I was watching it through a screen. Everyone's joy sounded like it came from the next room over. Then I heard her name. Miranda? I turned slightly. A woman I vaguely recognized, Ava maybe, was scrolling her phone beside the cooler. I didn't know she was dating someone new, she said offhandedly, showing the screen to the girl beside her. Wait, Miranda who? I asked, my voice sharper than I meant. The girl looked up. Miranda Shaw. She's at that resort in Killington with some guy. I figured you two broke up. I stepped toward her before I could think better of it. Can I see that? She blinked, surprised, then turned her phone toward me. It was an Instagram story, one of those quick little 10-second clips, already looping back to the beginning. Miranda, hair down, sunlit shoulders bare, cocktail in hand, laughing. Not just laughing, leaning in close to a man I'd never seen before, her hand grazing his chest like it belonged there. He whispered something in her ear. She smirked. The story ended with her blowing a kiss at the camera, his hand on her waist. The caption read, "Guess who found vacation company?" I couldn't breathe. Something sharp and cold and blinding cracked through my chest. The fireworks started right then, out over the lake. Big, bright, unapologetic bursts of color painted across the night sky. Everyone around me turned and pointed, faces lit with red and gold. But I couldn't look up, because right there in my hands was the one thing Miranda had never allowed before, proof. Not silence, not ambiguity, not miscommunication. Just a single moment she'd chosen to share with the world, and not with me. I handed the phone back without a word. Ava, or whoever she was, gave me a sheepish look. I thought you knew. I'm sorry. I nodded, swallowed the acid rising in my throat, and stepped away from the party. Walked until the voices dimmed, until the lights faded behind me. And when I reached the edge of the lake, I stood there in the dark, the explosions behind me echoing like applause. It was our anniversary, and she was somewhere else, celebrating with someone else. It wasn't a wound anymore. It was a decision, and it was the last gift I'd ever accept from her. Sunday morning arrived slow and gray. The kind of morning where the city seemed half awake, like even the streets weren't ready to face the day. I was. There was no rage in me. Not anymore. Something colder had settled in overnight, like frost across old emotions. I wasn't pacing or ranting or breaking dishes. I was just still, and I knew exactly what I needed to do. By 9:30, I was sitting across from a woman named Carla McKay, Divorce attorney, midtown office with 2 mini leather chairs and not enough warmth. She was brisk but kind. Asked the right questions. Didn't blink when I said, "She's having an affair. I want it done quickly." Carla offered me water. I declined. Her pen moved fast over the form. "Do you have access to her social media? Screenshots would help. Anything with location tags or intimacy. Just to be safe." I slid my phone across the desk. "Start with the story she posted last night. It's public." She tapped her nails on the screen, nodded slightly, and kept working. There was something oddly therapeutic about it. Watching this part of my life be broken down into sections. Assets, shared accounts, the lease on our apartment. Nothing romantic. Nothing personal. Just terms. Conditions. I signed where she pointed. By the time I left her office, the clouds had parted. The sun came through weak and uncertain, but still, it showed up. I walked home. Didn't take the subway. I needed the time, the motion, the clarity. Back at the apartment, I brewed a fresh pot of coffee. The smell filled the space like armor. It used to be something we shared, weekend mornings in pajamas, both reaching for the sugar jar at the same time. Now it was mine. I sat at the kitchen table, mug in hand, the papers Carla had sent already printed and stacked beside me. Not a sound in the apartment except for the faint hum of the fridge. It was in that silence that something clicked. This wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming the space I'd shrunk myself to fit inside. Miranda hadn't just cheated on me. She'd rewritten the rules of who we were. And I had let her. For months, maybe longer. All the dismissive shrugs, the gaslighting, the empty apologies, each one chipped away at something I thought was solid. But now I saw it clearly. I wasn't broken. Just done pretending she hadn't broken something. The phone buzzed once on the counter, an old message from work. I ignored it. I took another slow sip of coffee, watching the steam curl upward like smoke from a fire already put out. That was the thing. She thought I'd fall apart. She thought silence would keep me frozen. But silence is just space. And now, I was learning to fill it. I waited until late afternoon. Not because I was hesitant, no. That part of me had been burned away somewhere between the Instagram post and the signed documents now sealed in an envelope on the coffee table. I waited because I knew Miranda's friend, Lacey, would pick up then. She always posted her brunch selfies around noon, then settled into her Sunday routine. Wine, reruns, and unsolicited relationship advice in group chats. So I called her. The phone rang twice before her voice came through, breezy, unbothered. "Lacey." I didn't waste time. "Hey, it's Liam." A pause. Then her tone shifted, just slightly. "Oh, hey, what's up? I just need you to do me a favor," I said, keeping my voice calm, deliberate. "Next time Miranda checks in, if she does, just let her know the divorce proceedings are underway. The paperwork's been filed. That's all." Silence. A long one. When Lacey spoke again, she sounded like someone suddenly unsure if they were standing on solid ground. "Wait, what? You're serious?" "Very. You're divorcing her?" "But you guys always seemed so." "We're not," I said, cutting gently through the sentence. "We haven't been. Not for a while." She sucked in a quiet breath. "Does she know?" "No. But she will." I could hear the sound of movement on her end, probably pacing or standing to get distance from whoever was nearby. "I mean, I don't want to get in the middle of anything, but, Liam, this is a lot. Maybe you should wait until she's back? Talk it out." "I did wait," I replied. "For months. Through the lying, the silence, the condescension. This isn't sudden. It's overdue." Lacey didn't answer right away. And in that pause, something deeper settled in my chest. A strange, almost weightless clarity. "I'm not asking you to explain it to her," I added. "Just pass along the message. She deserves to know where this is headed." Lacey's voice returned, thinner now. Okay, I'll tell her. Thank you." I hung up before she could say anything else. I set the phone down, exhaled, and poured the last of my coffee into the sink. The act felt symbolic, draining the remnants of something that had already gone cold. Outside, the city lights were beginning to flicker on, one window at a time. A breeze came through the cracked kitchen window, rustling the takeout menu still pinned to the fridge with a magnet from some forgotten vacation. I should have felt shaken, but I didn't. I felt prepared. I imagined Lacey's face as she delivered the news. Miranda on the other end of a call, lounging in a resort robe, sipping something bright and meaningless, her laughter dying mid-sip. I wondered how fast she'd call me. I wondered if she'd even try to lie. But I wasn't bracing for it anymore. I wasn't dreading the spin or rehearsing what I'd say when she tried to drag me into another circle of emotional gymnastics. I'd already spoken, and my words weren't up for revision. It started 15 minutes after the call. My phone lit up on the counter, screen glowing like a warning flare. Her name flashed once, twice, then again. Miranda. The calls came in waves, sometimes back to back, other times spaced out by a few minutes like she was trying to convince herself to stay composed. But I knew better. I knew the rhythm of her panic. I knew the soundless spin of her control slipping through her fingers. And I didn't answer a single one. I stood by the window instead, cradling a mug of peppermint tea, letting the steam rise past my face like smoke from a fire I didn't need to put out. The view wasn't much. Just traffic trickling down 12th Street, and the red glow haze of brake lights stretching for blocks. But somehow, it felt wider than before, like I'd opened a window in my own chest, and something old had flown out. The phone buzzed again. She was nothing if not persistent. A text followed, 3 of them, rapid fire. Miranda, Liam. What is this? Miranda. Lacey said something insane. Call me right now. Miranda. This isn't funny. I didn't reply. Instead, I took another slow sip, letting the warmth hit the back of my throat. The flavor was sharp and clean. Uncomplicated. That's what I wanted now. Clean things. Clear lines. Words that meant what they said. No more of her half-truths or guilt-laced rewrites of our shared history. She called again. The ringtone vibrated through the wood of the counter, echoing like a broken alarm in a silent church. But I didn't reach for it. Instead, I let my eyes trace the horizon, where concrete met sky, where lives were unfolding in 1,000 other apartments just like mine. People cooking, laughing, forgetting. Starting over. That thought landed heavier than I expected. Starting over. Because until now, I hadn't really believed I was doing it. I'd been reacting, surviving. But in that moment, standing still while the world moved around me, I felt the first real pulse of something else. Control. Not over her. Over me. The phone rang again. Miranda. I leaned back against the frame of the window, one shoulder pressed to the glass, my breath leaving soft fog on the pane. It was almost poetic. All those times she'd withdrawn, left conversations mid-sentence, turned her back mid-argument like silence gave her the high ground. Now I was the one who disappeared. Not out of cruelty. Out of choice. Out of peace. I didn't know her my attention anymore. Not after what I'd seen. Not after the months of dismissal, the gaslighting, the shrinking feeling that I'd somehow become invisible in my own home. I watched the screen fade to black again. Quiet returned. And it was beautiful. I stayed by that window for over an hour. The tea went cold. The sun disappeared behind high rises. My reflection in the glass grew darker, blurrier, like even the version of me that had waited for her was starting to fade. By the time I turned off the ringer, I wasn't angry. I was done. I didn't sleep much that night. Not because I was anxious. Those days were gone. It was something quieter than anxiety, something colder. A kind of stillness that only comes when a storm has passed, and all that's left is to assess the wreckage. The morning light crept in through the blinds in soft gold strips. I made coffee the same way I always did. 2 scoops, no sugar, and sat by the kitchen window again. The city looked hushed, almost thoughtful. Even the traffic below moved differently, like it knew something had changed. My phone sat where I'd left it, face down, silent. It hadn't buzzed in hours, not since just after midnight. But I knew the moment was coming. And sure enough, at 8:17 a.m., it lit up again. Miranda. I let it ring twice, just long enough for her to think I might ignore it again. Then I answered. Liam. Her voice cracked like a dam giving out. I said nothing, just waited. Oh my God, are you really doing this? She continued. You're actually filing for divorce? She was crying. Though whether the tears were real or just part of the script, I couldn't tell. And I didn't care. I don't understand, she said next, voice trembling. What did I do that was so awful you couldn't even talk to me first? I took a sip of coffee before answering. You'll find out in court. Silence. Complete, heavy silence. Then she laughed. Not the joyful kind. Not even bitter. It was fragile, like glass already cracking under its own weight. You can't be serious, she whispered. This is crazy. We're just going through a rough patch, Liam. That's all this is. I didn't answer. She kept going. Okay, yes, I went on a trip. And maybe I needed space. But this? You think that means we're done? Over a girls' weekend? There was a guy in your story, Miranda, I said, voice even. His hand on your waist. Your lips at the camera like you were single. You tagged the resort. Publicly. That, she stammered. That was nothing. It was just a joke. A stupid inside joke with the girls. That guy? He's no one. A bartender. I didn't even talk to him. You leaned into him. She hesitated. You smiled at the camera like it was a game. I continued. You knew exactly what that story would look like. And you posted it anyway. I didn't think you'd see it, she blurted, then immediately corrected. I didn't mean anything by it. Exactly. That slip. That was the truth. She never thought I'd see it. Or maybe she hoped I would, and expected me to spiral, to beg. But not this. Not silence. Not divorce. Not power without volume. I've already signed, I said. You'll get the papers this week. My lawyer has your updated address. Liam, wait. I did wait, I said sharply, the first crack in my calm. For months. While you stopped coming home on time. While you started pulling away from conversations, from dinners, from me. I waited while you turned our marriage into a performance. And I gave you every chance to be honest. Every single one. She was crying now. Really crying. That tight-throated sob she usually saved for movies or arguments she couldn't win. I don't want to lose you, she said, barely above a whisper. You already did. She went silent again, as if those 4 words knocked the wind out of her. I can change, she said. I'll come home. We can talk. Please, just don't end it like this. We've built a life, Liam. No, I said. I built a life. You treated it like a rental. That's when she broke, fully. I could hear it in the way her breath caught, in the ugly gasp that followed. The performance was over. The spotlight cut out. The audience had gone home, and she was alone on stage. I don't know what to do, she whispered. That's not my problem anymore. I hung up. Then I placed the phone down gently, turned toward the rising sun, and finished the last sip of my coffee. For the first time in a long time, it didn't taste bitter. I didn't plan to see her again. Ava, the woman who had shown me Miranda's story at Jonah's party. At the time, I'd barely registered her face. Everything had gone numb the second I saw that screen. But a few days later, I found myself walking past a cafe just off 7th and Broome, a quiet little place with ivy on the windows and mismatched tables on the sidewalk. And there she was, sitting alone by the window, sipping something pale from a ceramic mug. She looked up just as I passed, and for a second, neither of us spoke. Then she gave me a small wave. I don't know why I went in. Maybe I needed a different kind of silence. One that didn't echo. Hey, I said as I approached. Ava smiled. Not politely, genuinely. The kind of smile you give someone when you're not trying to prove anything. Hey, Liam. I gestured to the chair across from her. Is this seat taken? Only by my poor taste in scones, she said, sliding a half-eaten one to the edge of her plate. Try it if you're into chalk. I laughed. For real. It felt strange. Good strange. I ordered a black coffee, declined the scone, and sat across from her. There was no awkwardness. No tension. Just the sound of the espresso machine humming behind us and the occasional clink of plates from the kitchen. We talked about Jonah for a bit. How he was still bad at hosting. How his playlist hadn't changed since 2012. Then, Ava leaned back slightly and looked at me with that same calm from the party. I didn't mean to drop that bomb on you the other night, she said softly. I shrugged. You didn't. You just lit the fuse. She smiled again, but her eyes stayed serious. She posted it knowing people would see it. I think part of her wanted someone to report back to you. Yeah, I said, but she wasn't expecting silence in return. Ava nodded, letting the weight of that hang between us. Then she stirred her tea. I know what it's like, she said after a moment. To wake up one morning and realize someone's been emotionally slipping away for a long time. Only you were the last to notice. I looked at her. That wasn't something people said lightly. You been through it? I asked. She nodded. 3 years ago. My ex-husband. Different circumstances, same hollow ending. I wanted to ask more, but she didn't elaborate, and I didn't push. Some stories were best left folded. Thanks, I said finally. For telling me that. For not treating me like a tragedy. Ava tilted her head. You don't look like a tragedy, Liam. You look like someone who just took their first real breath in a while. That caught me off guard. I didn't respond right away. I just took a sip of my coffee and let her words settle in. Because maybe she was right. The pain was still there, dull and heavy, but it wasn't the center of everything anymore. There was space now, room for something else. We sat like that for a while, letting conversation ebb and flow without pressure. It wasn't flirty. It wasn't romantic. It was honest. And after months of confusion and manipulation, that honesty felt like gold. Just before we stood to leave, Ava pulled a small notebook from her bag and jotted something down. My number, she said, sliding it across the table. Not because I expect anything, but in case you ever need someone in court who's seen the truth. I glanced at the paper, then at her. Thanks. That means more than you know. She smiled again, this time softer. I've got time, Liam. Take all of yours. As I stepped back onto the sidewalk, the world didn't feel quite so sharp anymore. The sky above was still gray. The city still loud. But inside, something had shifted. And for the first time in weeks, it didn't feel like the end of something. It felt like the start. I arrived at the courthouse early. Not out of nerves. Those had burned out weeks ago. But because I needed the silence before it all began. There's something sacred about being early. About owning a space before others can fill it with their energy. The courtroom was colder than I expected. Pale wood, high ceilings, fluorescent lights that flattened everything into grayscale. Carla, my lawyer, sat beside me, reviewing documents for the fourth time. She was steady, sharp. She didn't say much, and I appreciated that. At 9:01, the heavy doors creaked open. Miranda stepped in. I didn't recognize her at first. Her hair, usually sleek and composed, was pulled into a rushed bun, strands falling out like she'd slept through her alarm. The makeup she wore looked unfinished, as if applied between sobs. She wore a navy dress, slightly wrinkled, and clutched her purse like it was the only thing anchoring her. She wasn't wearing her wedding ring. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt distant. She paused when she saw me. Her mouth twitched like she wanted to say something. Maybe call my name, maybe ask for a moment. But the bailiff pointed her to the opposite table. She nodded, stiffly, and walked without a word. The judge entered a few minutes later, an older woman with sharp eyes and a voice that cut like a scalpel. What followed was clinical. Carla spoke clearly, presenting the timeline of events. She cited dates, messages, travel records. Then, without flourish, she laid Miranda's Instagram story on the screen. The moment paused at its worst frame. Miranda, leaning into that stranger, cocktail in hand, eyes heavy with flirtation. Miranda flinched. I watched her face as she realized it wasn't just a slip-up anymore. It was part of a case, a record, a consequence. Her lawyer objected briefly, claimed the post lacked context. The judge raised an eyebrow. The caption says vacation company, with a kiss emoji. I think the context is self-evident. Miranda's shoulders folded inward. This wasn't the stage she was used to. No makeup lighting, no curated filters, no ability to spin it into something poetic. This was plain wood and legal language and receipts. Her composure cracked again when Carla mentioned the date of the post, our anniversary. That was when I looked at her. Really looked. She wasn't angry. She was small, like someone who had built their identity on borrowed confidence and was now realizing the lease had expired. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I simply breathed. And for the first time in years, I didn't taste guilt in the air. The hearing was almost over. Just a few final signatures, a quiet murmur between attorneys, and the judge's firm nod to close the session. It was all procedural now. The wreck had already been examined, photographed, and cataloged. But Miranda wasn't done. As the judge gathered her papers, Miranda suddenly stood. Wait, she said, her voice cracking across the quiet room. Your Honor, please. Just one moment. The judge glanced up, wary. You've already had the opportunity to speak through counsel. I know, Miranda said, looking at me instead. But I need to say something. To him. I didn't move. My face stayed neutral. But my hands, folded neatly in my lap, tensed. Miranda stepped closer to the center of the room, tears on her cheeks this time. Real ones. Not performative, not theatrical. Just desperate. Liam, she began, voice trembling. I made mistakes. I shut you out. I know that now. I stayed seated. She continued, her words rushing out like someone trying to beat a closing door. I got lost somewhere. I let myself drift. But I didn't mean to hurt you like this. I thought I needed space, freedom, but none of it mattered. Not when it cost you. I still didn't respond. You were the only thing that ever felt real, she said, her voice now just above a whisper. And I know I don't deserve it. But if there's even a piece of you left that remembers who we used to be, her eyes shimmered. Please, just give me one more chance. I'll do anything. The room fell silent. Everyone waited. The clerk, the bailiff, even the judge paused her pen in midair. I stood slowly. And beside me, Ava rose too. She had slipped in quietly halfway through, just like she said she might. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. When she gently reached for my hand, I didn't hesitate. I took it, and together, we turned, walked past Miranda without a word. Her breath hitched behind us, a sound that might have once shattered me. But now it only echoed. The courtroom doors opened with a heavy push, and as they closed behind us, I didn't look back. I didn't need to. That chapter was sealed. Not with a bang, not with a scream, but with silence. The powerful kind. Outside, the sun had finally broken through the clouds. Warm, honest light poured over the courthouse steps. Ava squeezed my hand once, then let it go. You okay? She asked. I took a breath. I will be. And for the first time in a long time. I meant it.